오제 샹기 콤팡유토쇼. Let's do the 4 limitless contemplations in English first. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen damche dewatang dewe jutang denba juchik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa juchik, dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindrawa juchik, nering chak tang mi tang trawe tang nong chempo lani pa juchik. That says it all, those 4 limitless contemplations, because we create the causes of happiness, we create the causes of suffering, and the only happiness that is really true is that cannot be touched by suffering. Because even when people are happy, there's going to come a time when that happiness ends. And so we've got to go to a point which is beyond the suffering. And then that universal impartial compassion, which is what we're trying to learn in this Chod practice, that hasn't got bias. Whether it's a friend or a demon or anyone you don't like, it's got no bias. So thanks, Kat. So tonight we're going to do part 2 of the demons of depression, anxiety, and anger, applying the principles of the Chod practice. Now, as I was saying to everybody last week, it's really important to understand the ancient mystical practice of the Chod. Even if you can't directly relate to it, when we take it to a Western level, you will be able to create it. But it's very important that you actually understand that it is that ancient practice which comes from a very high level that we are trying to really do. And I will give you the practice, a little one just now, but let's just do 3 little stories. So the first one was a little poem which went like this. Go to the edge, the voice said. No, they said, we will fall. Go to the edge, the voice said. No, they said, we will be pushed over. Go to the edge, the voice said. So they went and they were pushed and they flew. They flew. Now, that's really what it's about. That fear that we have that always holds us back, that always says, I can't. I've got anxiety about this. I've got anxiety about that. I'd like to do this, but I can't. That fear, that anxiety doesn't allow us to fly. So it's most important that we get in touch with it. Then the second one, which I have read you before, but it's very appropriate here, is the fable of the porcupine. And it's very important here too, because it says, it was the coldest winter ever. Porcupines grouped themselves together to protect themselves. They gave off heat, but their quills wounded each other. So they're distanced from each other, but they died alone and frozen. The choice, accept the quills of companions or disappear from the earth. So wisely, they went back together. They learned to live with the wounds caused by the quills in close relationships, and they survived them. And the moral is, which is very funny, learn to love the pricks in your life. Okay, so when people prick you, stop and actually say to yourself, this pricking might be something I'm really needing. This might be a lesson. This might be what I'm actually needing to really go forward a lot in my life. And then the other little story that I wanted to read you, which was Chang Tzu's story. And it also is really important. I have read it before, but it's very important here. If a man is crossing a river and an empty boat collides with his own boat, even though he be a bad-tempered man, he will not become very angry. But if he sees a man in the boat, he will shout at the man to steer clear. If the shout is not heard, he will shout again and yet again, and he'll begin cursing. And all because there is somebody in the boat. Yet, if the boat were empty, he would not be shouting and he would not be angry. So, Chang Tzu says, if you can empty your own boat, crossing the river of the world, no one will oppose you and no one will seek to harm you.
Say that again.
No one will oppose you and no one will seek to harm you. So in other words, if there's someone we can blame, then all that anger comes out, okay? If it's a force of whatever, we always blaming. But these three little stories are really important because I think they tell us that what we're looking at in the Chod practice is another angle, another view to all the misfortunes in our life, to all the absolutely everything that happens to us in our life. So I hope that a lot of you will have listened to part one if you weren't here, but I will give you a little bit of background because it's really important that you have the background to the principles of the Chod practice. Okay, there is a deep understanding that happens when you begin to get insight into how we have solidified, like the person in the boat, all our negative qualities, so that they are totally part now of our conditioned existence. So for example, if there's a new situation, for a lot of people who have the demon of anxiety, it is, oh my goodness, anxiety. How will I do this? What will they expect of me? What, and often then, I'm not going to manage this. I know I'm not really up to the task. Maybe if I organize it more, maybe if I do this and do this and do this and do this, then I can ensure that I'll be okay. Now, when we do that, when we really, really actually organize everything with the human mind, there's no space for spontaneous action that comes from a higher level within us. It's all too controlling with the human part of the mind. And there's no space. If you look at the Buddha mind, the awakened mind, there are two things in it: space and awareness. And if you look at it, everything can fit into the space. Even the bad things can fit into the space of your awakened mind. But if you're holding so tight, and if you're feeling so bad and believe that's solid and believe that's you, then there's no place for that awakened mind to come through you. And I'll give you a lot of time to debate this, okay? So we were speaking last week in the Chod practice of the bodhicitta heart, okay? Bodhicitta means awakened, compassionate heart that wants to free us and all sentient beings. And we were talking about the habit of depression, anxiety, fear, anger, but there are thousands of these demons that we have. I just took those three because I thought those were the most obvious ones in this virus time, okay? But these thousands of inner demons that we have, the saboteur, the addictive the addiction to whatever, the alcoholic, the drug addict, the anorexic, all of these are simply habits, demons that we've got inside. And they are the habitual forces that we fight against. We want to get rid of them. I want to get rid of this depression. I don't want to look at it. What is it telling me? Okay. And we fight rather than having an understanding of what these forces that we ourselves have created. That's the important thing. We've created them before, and now they come straight back to bite us. You can see it in babies. You can see it in children. They come in with weird ideas. You do things with one child, with one baby, and they are absolutely fine with it. You do it to another baby, and they become absolutely angry. They're already struggling with that inside because they carry this, so to speak, habitual tendency, creation of our own that's been with us for many, many lifetimes. And I've got to tell you that whenever I'm sitting with people, and there are so many right now that are going through such trauma, such anguish. And it really, I was listening to a podcast the other day by a doctor, and he said this COVID and this long COVID causes an immense depression in people. And I was really thinking about it because I'm not a depressive type of person, but I was thinking about it. And I think it is, because I think when we lock down and everything, we haven't got the same ability to run out and go out and distract ourselves in the same way. So I think there is a lot of anxiety and depression. And this doctor, this pulmonary specialist, he said that there is immense depression on this planet right now from the virus. Now, what is interesting is because we got to ask ourselves why the chirp practice. And what I didn't mention last time is that in Tibet, because Machik Lobtron, that I'll tell you about again, she brought this chirp practice to Tibet. And one of the things they were called in to do, which is interesting, is that when there was a pandemic, they were called in when there were these terrible illnesses that people had, black fevers and all that kind of thing. Then the chirp practitioners were called in to feed the demons of illness, the demons of the pandemic. And that made me really think, what are these demons of the pandemic? I mean, what are they telling us? What is this virus, this COVID telling us? What is it actually telling us? What is the solid habit that is there? It's actually telling us somewhere that all it is an outer manifestation of an inner quality, an inner demon. We are not caring enough. We are killing. We are not compassionate enough. We are not anything. We are out for ourselves and our ego, and we have this immense clinging to our egos. I'm talking in general. There are lots of people that are not like that, but I'm talking in general, even towards our animal life. And so it's resulted in a virus, and it's resulted in a pandemic. And in Tibet, the chirp practitioners were called in where there was a pandemic. And they used to do this feeding of the demons with the drums and the bells and the thigh bone. They did the feeding of the demons of the pandemic. And guess what? The pandemic stopped. And they never got the illness, which is quite interesting because they went right into the middle of the illness and they never got it themselves. So it's quite an interesting thing. You can discuss it with me, just give you a little more background. So Machik Labtron, and I've got this beautiful tanker that was sent from Tibet for us. And where's Lee? I can't see Lee, but Lee, we've got to put this up in the center, or Robbie, maybe one of you have got to go and put it properly up in the center. And then I hope when people even go in for their Nondra practice, that they will see this beautiful tanker of Matchik and maybe do special prayers for all the sick people on the whole planet and everything. And I think it can really help. But she founded the Chod practice after receiving it from her guru, who was Padampa Sangye, and his practice was the practice of pacifying suffering, of which he was the master. Now, Mimi, it's very interesting. It's very interesting for you, because you were asking yesterday about the difference between pacifying and placating. And it's a really important thing, because placating, when you placate somebody, you actually tell lies to them. So you agree with them even when you don't think they're right. But pacifying is an enlightened activity. Placating is not an enlightened activity. Every master, I can tell you that with Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, always tells me the truth about me. There's no placatory. But if I'm in a state, or if any of you are in a state, you have to pacify that person. And how do you do that enlightened activity? When somebody is ranting and raving, you cannot tell them the truth. You cannot stand there and try and tell them the truth. You can't use any of the other enlightened activities, which are magnetizing. You magnetize them to your beauty, to everything that is in your nature. It's magnetizing, it's increasing, which is increasing the goodness. It's subjugating, which is subjugating the demon, which Guru Rinpoche's work is all about. But the pacifying is so important, because you cannot feed a baby until you have pacified that baby. So you have to give that baby a dummy. Now, how do you give a dummy? As soon as you wake up the compassionate heart and you look at a person, or you even look at your own demon, if it's anxiety, if it's anger, if it's aggression, if it's an addiction, if it's really depression, whatever it is, you have to look at that demon, and you have to open your heart to that demon, not fight it. The minute you fight it, it increases its power. The minute you offer it, the minute you pacify it, so you actually are saying, hang on, Mr. Depression, you've been with me this whole lifetime and many lifetimes. And what is it that you're telling me? And you suddenly look, and suddenly your heart opens, because you start to actually know that maybe this inner demon, this inner force is not bad. Maybe it's telling me something. Maybe it's telling me the things that I really need to know. Maybe it's saying, listen, the way you're living is not going to take you to any enlightened state. So the minute you pacify, you're actually going, I'm not judging you. I know what you are, and I really understand you, no matter how evil you are. If you take an alcoholic demon, okay, and each week you say, I'm never going to drink again. Look what it's done to me. I'm never going to take a drug again. I'm never going to do this again. You do that with that demon, but it just gets stronger and it happens again. But the minute you open the bodhicitta heart, which is what the Chod practice is about, you start to understand, what is this? Maybe you, alcoholic demon, maybe you're scared of things. Maybe you're scared of being close to people. Maybe you don't trust how you are with people. Maybe you are there because you feel more confident when you're drunk or when you've had something that changes and alters your consciousness. And suddenly you're opening your heart. And in the Chod practice, it is that you are, which I explained last week, and please get part 1 if you missed it, people. But what you're looking at is the consciousness in the Chod practice leaves your head. And then you watch yourself as this beautiful Vajrayogini, the red Dakini, and she takes that body that you've left behind and she cuts off your head. And it's interesting because my very first dream I ever had with Vajrayogini, she offered me a head on a plate. Okay, it was quite a shock, but it was an amazing change for me. But she cuts off the head and she expands its horizons. Then she takes the body and she chops it all up and she puts it into a cauldron and she makes the fire go. And it turns into this beautiful nectar. And then you feed the demon, all the demons. You can feed all the demons in our land. You give them to drink. You say, I understand you. I understand you completely. And what happens to them is they dissolve or they become an ally to you. So they change because of your compassionate heart. So it's a very compassionate practice. I'll soon give you a chance to ask me questions. So Machik Lobtron was the queen of Prajna Paramita. That is the wisdom, the paramita of wisdom, beyond this intellectual wisdom. She was the queen of that. It means the wisdom of perfection. That's the highest of all the paramitas, which are those qualities which go beyond earthly qualities, beyond human wisdom. And there we learn to realize that everything is empty. And what does that mean? You'll go, nonsense. It's not empty, it's solid. But that's where we learn from that Prajna Paramita that things aren't solid, meaning that everything other than our Buddha nature, our awakened nature, is dependent on something else. So empty means empty of a separate existence. Now, as soon as you know that something is empty of a separate existence, then you know that it doesn't stand on its own, that one causative factor comes in and it's changed. It just changes and changes and changes. It changes all the time. So it's not solid, it's not anything, and the form is emptiness and emptiness is form. So are all our feelings, our perceptions, our habits, our consciousness is all empty. Now, if you look at the story of the well, it's a very interesting thing because a man dug a well by the side of the road. For a long time after this, weary travelers felt so grateful that they could recharge at the well. So they called it the Wonderful Well. But one night, a man fell into it and drowned. So it became known as the Dreadful Well. And travelers started avoiding it. Later, it was discovered that the drowned man was a thief who was drunk. Okay, a thief who was drunk and had left the road to avoid the police. So it became widely known that the drunken thief had fallen into the justice dispensing well. Okay, now just think of it. It changed its name all the time. And everything in your life changes every minute. That is what emptiness does. It means empty of a separate existence. So if it's empty of a separate existence, it means you can change it any minute. You can dump it any minute. You can feed it any minute. It goes from the wonderful well to the dreadful well to the justice dispensing well, depending on what's happened. And your moods go from exhilarated to anxious to happy. I mean, your moods can change in about an hour of the day. So I want you really, really to think about this very, very carefully, because depression is there because of some cause. People not seeing us for what we are, the world not being what we want, relationships not what we desire. So we feel depression. And then we created this habit that's gone with us in our imprints for lifetime after lifetime. And if you see it, you begin to understand this inner force. I really need to get it. I need to feed it with my compassionate heart. I need to do a practice that can really, really feed it. So Machik knew, she was aware that the first enlightened activity must be pacification. You've got to calm someone. You've got to understand them. You've got to give the habit tenderness, understanding, compassion, pacify it, feed it, offer it your heart, your body. And then when calm and eased and understood, it dissolves instantly in its place. And something else arises. And it's also empty and dependent, but maybe more constructive. And then we can work on ourselves. We can work on these inner forces. We can really change them. I'd like to give you some quotes from Ekong Rinpoche, but just let me stop. Just let me give you one quote here. The Buddha said, seeing the frightful transformation of Mara's army, Mara's the demon, the pure being recognizes them as a product of illusion. There's no demon, no army, and no beings. There's not even a self. Like the image of the moon in water, the cycle of the three worlds is misleading. Now think about when Buddha gained enlightenment, and Thich Nhat Hanh describes it so beautifully that night. He was on the verge of realizing enlightenment, and he was attacked by the daughters of Mara. Mara is the seductive quality of the mind that continually tricks us into thinking that the endless circle of samsara contains some kind of essence or fulfillment. So when the Buddha was about to be enlightened, he had all these images. Also Milarepa, when he was in his cave, he had all these seductive images that said, come with me, come on. Now we have those seductive images all the time saying, you know what? If you find the right relationship, you'll be so happy. If you get rid of this, if you get to the top power in your life, you'll be really, really happy. And all these seductions all the time, and we believe them. And sometimes we even get them. And then when we get them, after a while, we don't even like them anymore. We don't even want them anymore. They don't mean anything anymore. So those are called the seduction maras of samsara, that every single person who had enlightenment found that. And in the Chod practice, there are always these beautiful melodies, because you sing them. I would like to read you what happened to Surya Das, who was a Jewish guy who became a Buddhist monk. And he was sent into the charnel grounds to do his Chod practice. And his experience You can kill yourself laughing. But what happened to him in those charnel grounds is so funny. But maybe I should just ask you if you want to ask anything or say anything, because that's a lot already. Anyone?
Yeah, I got something to say, even though I'm going to take you right back to the beginning. Another version of that empty boat story. There was a monk who stepped out, sat in his boat to go and meditate. And as he's meditating there, he feels a bump, as if another boat has struck his. And he gets all infuriated. He's angry. He's thinking, what the hell is wrong with you? Can't you see me here meditating? And of course, as you know, he looks up and guess what? It's an empty boat. And that's when he attained enlightenment almost instantly, because that's when he realized the anger is inside me. And then he began to treat everybody as nothing more than an empty vessel. And one more quick thing. We run a signage company, so I can definitely get my guys to install the tanker for you nicely if that's the case, but we can discuss that
very
off topic.
Good. Thank you. That's very, very good, because I wanted to be there. And maybe this short practice that Kathy and I are going to give you would be really, really good to do. Thanks, Eric. That's good. Anyone else? Anyone want to ask or say or whatever? Or you all okay?
Mel, if I can ask something.
Please, Cooks, please, go ahead.
You know, in terms of there being no self and no others, that's where I get a bit confused, because we are wanting to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So does that mean ultimately there are no other sentient beings? That's the sort of thing that confuses me slightly, you know what I'm saying?
You know what? Actually, that's a very interesting thing, because if you read the very high teachers, if you actually study Guru Rinpoche, he'll say everything is a manifestation of everyone else. So basically, you know, I've actually manifested all of you tonight, okay? And so actually everything is a manifestation of our minds. And actually our minds all belong to a universal core, which is Buddha nature or awakened nature, or whatever you want to call it. So it is interesting what you call. But when you are negotiating in samsara, it's quite okay to actually see that there are other people. But when you go to an enlightened state, there is no you and me. That's why these very high masters, they see you as them. So when they are telling you something or another, they actually feel great compassion, even when they are giving you something not so nice, because everybody is a manifestation of everybody else, actually. But when you're in samsara, of course, we live our own lives, we go through what we have to go through, and naturally there are going to be many people. But the idea of all of this is so that we can actually see that all the people around us, in fact, I was thinking I want to do a session on mirror-like wisdom, mirror-like primordial consciousness on its own, so that we can really look in what the mirror is showing you in the karmic imprints and everything. If what they say in Buddhism is that every single situation that you find yourself is a creation of your mind. I just pondered that, Fiona. I mean, isn't that an amazing thing? You go, forget it. I didn't create that ugly scenario that I just went through. I didn't create this virus. I'm a good girl. I'm doing everything. I didn't create this back and forth, whatever. I didn't create this job, but you did. It's all creations of your mind. But that doesn't mean you walk around the world and say, well, anyway, everything's empty, so why should I worry? It's emptiness is not nothingness. Emptiness is empty of a separate existence, okay? Empty of a separate existence, and know that definition. Emptiness is very different to nothingness. Emptiness is empty of a separate existence. The only thing that has got a separate existence is our awakened nature. Everything else is dependent on this. So when you change the causes, the conditions change. And then they change again, and then they change again. So why are we gripping so tightly? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Does that help? Anyone else want to add to
No,
that?
I have a question
Yes.
about emptiness, because I absolutely understand that it's not vacant space to rent.
Exactly.
But for me, I think of emptiness as kind of overflowing with potential, with
Yes.
possibilities.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that's 100% right. Emptiness is overflowing with possibilities, but because it's not a separate existence,
Yes.
we have got to train the mind not to see it as solid, not to see it as us. The whole thing in the Chod practice is there's no ego and there's nothing, there's no demon. And what happens is, as soon as you turn your awareness to the shadow force, it will be instantly liberated and vanished. And it's not what we thought. It's not a monster.
Exactly.
So yes, Lynn.
I drive quite a lot backwards and forwards, and I've got a voice of His Holiness the Karmapa. I'm listening to the Heart Sutra at the moment, okay? And it's not an easy thing that you're trying to describe at all. And he uses what you've just used, that word. It's Fiona, what I understand him to say, and I turned it back and I listened, and I turned it back and I listened, and I thought, oh, it's like, it's ephemeral almost, okay? And he says that as soon as you decide it's not, it also is. So it's just not what you think it is. It's not, if you're going to go die, if you're going to go on, it is full of potential. That fits in with my somethingness very nicely. But as soon as you create that somethingness, it's also not. So there's the balance. There's right through everything. There's the interdependence of and interconnectedness and not of everythingness or nothingness. And
I quite agree with you. And it's very difficult.
It's just not how you think it is.
And you can't analyze it. But you know the famous story of the rope and the snake. So you walk into a dark room and you go, oh my goodness, there's a snake coiled up, okay? And you're absolutely petrified, you're standing straight. Then you go and switch the light on and you go, oh, it's only a rope curled up. I thought it was a snake, And that's the famous story, that when you turn the light of awareness on, it's something different. And so all of you, when you really understand this, what this pacification of suffering really is, what Machik was really doing with the pacification of suffering, you understand it's shining the light of awareness, switching on the light. So you can see in the dark, the rope looked like a snake. Wake up and it looks like a rope. I always told you my funny story that I was once on retreat with Rob Nairn, that story. And he was telling the story of the rope and the snake. So anyway, we were discussing it and debating it and all of that kind of thing. And then we went out for breakfast after that. So as I was standing at the breakfast table, going to help myself to food, one of the guys shouted, "Watch it, Melanie, there's a snake." And I went, ha, 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 And at that moment, the snake came crawling right next to me. And I jumped over it. I got such a fright. But that's my famous story about the snake and the rope. I mean, it was absolutely hilarious because I thought, these guys had been ragging all morning about the rope and the snake. And there was really a snake. Was there really a snake? Or was it my creation? Because I was afraid or whatever. You got to look at all of this because we create the situation. And I really think it's so important because I honestly one day was out in the bush. We were in the bush with friends. And I went to the bottom of the garden to go and meditate. And I think I told you there was this big iguana. And the big iguana decided, was very fascinated with me meditating, and I wasn't even looking over there. Suddenly I finished my meditation and my eyes turned, and there was this huge, enormous creature, not harming me, just watching me. I don't know if he was feeling my light or whatever he was feeling and everything. You could tell me, Ross. But I jumped up. And later on, I thought, why did I do that? That was such a bad moment because when I saw him, immediately panic. This huge thing, is he going to jump on my lap? Is he going to bite me? What's he going to do? He was just fascinated with me. He was fascinated with my meditation. So why did I get anxious?
Habit.
Habit, absolute habit. And the thing is that it would have been beautiful because maybe my meditation with this creature next to me was something where I could have overcome my fears. And had I been doing the chirp practice and dissolved my body into nectar and fed this being, he might have overcome all his things about humans and what they did and all of that. And I had a chance and I failed. And I don't know if I would pass next time if it happened to me. I'm not sure. So it's a very difficult thing, you know. But okay, so any other questions about the chur? Because the most important thing with your inner demons, and we can do Sultra Malioni's 5-stage practice of feeding your demons. And a lot of you have done it, but we can do it in a different way because I want you to do it with the chur. But I want you to understand that we are looking at the demons inside us, but they really aren't demons. We're shining the light on them. We're seeing them for what they are, and then they are dissolving. Truly, truly, truly. And I actually think that I've really got to overcome my fear of creatures like that because it is absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And Ross, if you're prepared to help me with that, I'm prepared to do it. But I'm not sure that if I saw a snake, I wouldn't panic. Okay, but the thing is, that's how we've been ingrained all the time. And it's the same with all our negativity. And so it's very, very important when His Holiness the Karmapa asks the question at the empowerment that I went to with him of what is the meaning of chur, to cut through, to sever it's the antidote to ego clinging. It's the antidote to I, me, myself. And they talk about the 4 maras, okay, the 4 demons, which are really, really important. And I'm not going to teach them now. I've taught some of you before, but just to go through them, there's Skanda Mara, and Skanda Mara is the 5 aggregates: your form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and habits. I'm going to look at your thing in a moment, Steve. It's there are all all of those things, none of them are real. None of them are solid, yet we feel them, we perceive them, we have the habit of them, our consciousness goes. But this is what we're training our minds in the mind training. And so there's Skandamara, there's Kleshamara. Kleshamara is the afflictions, all those habits of anger, hatred, aggression, jealousy, pride, all those delusions, all of those things, that's Klesha Mara. And the third Mara is called Mara of the Lord of Death. Now, Mara of the Lord of Death is a very interesting Mara, because Mara of the Lord of Death comes and says to you, don't worry about anything spiritual. Everything's permanent. You're not going to die. Don't worry about it. You're okay. You've got everything you need. Mara of the Lord of Death tells you all the time that everything is permanent. And as we know, Henry, I mean, to lose your whole family over a short period of time is like what did Mara of the Lord of Death tell us? You know, how we would be there all the time and how everything would be permanent. And then the fourth Mara is Mara of the Son of Man. And guess what Mara of the Son of Man says? Come and do this pleasure. Come to the rave. Why not? It's fun. Let's go jolling. Come to this job. You'll make plenty of money. And then when you've got wealth, you'll be able to do everything you want. Come, get some more clothes. You haven't got enough. You know, get a bigger house. Get a smart car, then everybody will admire you. That's Mara of the Son of Man. And so we've got to be aware of these Maras. We've got to open our hearts and really feed them. So what I would like to do, if you want to ask or say, please do. But what I would like, go on, Henry. Love to hear you.
Okay, so what I get from this is, I mean, this is a very sort of fresh approach to conflict, and your strategy is pacifying, not fighting. So exactly. Then, you know, identify your demon, personify it, become the demon, cultivate awareness. That's what I'm understanding. However, even when you pacify a baby, you put that little dummy into that little demon baby's mouth, the baby doesn't go away. The baby doesn't go away, even if you pacify the baby.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Okay. So what we're talking about here is that we've created the monster. Okay, whatever it is, depression, anger, anxiety, fears, all the different fears that we've had, we've created the monster. But the monster is only a figment of our not our imagination, our mind projection. So when we look at this, what we are doing is, it doesn't even matter if you're not dissolving it into nothing. But when you're looking at it, you're suddenly looking at it with a great compassion in your heart, with bodhicitta heart, because you're saying, who are you? What do you want? What do you need from me? How can I help? What can I do so that I pacify you? And what happens to that monster is, suddenly it changes. Because, like, for instance, I have a lot of people who've got the demon of the saboteur, who sabotages anything. I'll give you an example of a girl I was helping. And she said, you know, Melanie, it's amazing. She said, I love my work. I want work so badly. But every time I get work, I start off with the greatest resolution. And then I don't do the work in time. I don't give it in time. And then the people that I'm working with are angry with me. She said, and I promise myself that I will be on time every time I start a project, but I never am. And then they land up angry with me. They want to delay the contract. They want to do things with me. She said, and I want the work and I need it. But why do I do it? So I said, let's look at your demon. And her demon was the saboteur. And when she became the saboteur, and I asked her, what do you want from me? What do you want? So the saboteur said, I don't believe you'll do it well. So I'm trying to prevent you from finishing the work and failing at it. Now, isn't that interesting?
It is.
I'm trying to prevent you and from failing at it. So when we talk to that demon and ask the demon, what do you need? What do you want? What do you need from me? The demon needed her to be really cautious in everything she was doing. The demon was really fear that she wouldn't be able to give the project as the project needed to be given. So as soon as she understood that with the greatest of depth, the demon started changing, because what she said to the demon, but you know, you're not helping me in any way, because every time you trip me up, I lose the project and then I'm not earning money, and you are very strong and I need you, but I need you to have a different voice for me. I need you to stand by me and maybe warn me a little bit, but don't pull me down so that I can't do the project. And when she became the demon, they were both very amenable with each other. And it helped tremendously. And that's the story of feeding that demon, that you get to the bottom. But the thing in the end is, in the end of the whole thing, everything dissolves. It really does. And there was never a you, and there was never a demon, and there was never me. But you still have to wake up in samsara the next day and go and do a project. And that demon is still inside you, even though it's not independent, it's not solid. So that work stops the demon from saying, you'll never make it, you're not going to make the project, rather don't do it on time. Now the demon's saying, be careful, there's a lot of work here, don't promise them too early. You know, the demon has changed, has become an ally now. And we are working with all the forces inside us, trying to help those forces so that even in the samsaric world, we can go forward. It's interesting. So let's just do a little meditation, everybody. You know what I'm going to do? Instead of hurrying, because I really think a lot of you really are getting this slowly. Instead of hurrying, let's do the Western practice next time. And let's stick with the Eastern practice this time, instead of me rushing through it. And let's do the whole session on feeding the demons. But let's now just get in touch with them, and let's learn this short practice of the chur that I want to give you, which some of you might really be willing to use. But let's first do a meditation. Okay? Just a deep looking. So get into your meditation posture, and you're breathing in and out, bringing your mind into this present moment. The past is gone. The future hasn't been made. And everything within you is just a creation of your mind. You're breathing in and out and coming to this moment in time, precious moment, a moment of discovery. And I want you to look at your most, just for a minute, to look at your most deep and dark demon. So maybe it's fear, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's telling yourself stories, maybe it's delusion, maybe it's an addiction of some sort. Maybe it's a food demon, eating too much, eating too little, starving yourself, vomiting, whatever else. All the fears you've got in the world. Just look at which is the most important. Maybe anger. You're quick to anger or quick to aggression. I want you to just identify your most obvious demon. You may have a whole pile of them. Like as Sutra Leone says, it's like those Russian dolls that fit into each other. But I want you to take your worst one. Maybe it's shyness, maybe it's withdrawal, maybe it's deluding yourself. And I just want you to, once you've got it, to put a big question mark in front of that demon. And ask yourself first, in which part of my body do I feel you? You can even put your hand in the part of the body that you feel the demon, maybe in your heart, maybe in the pit of your stomach, maybe in your throat, maybe in your face. Just feel the part of the body. And tonight you're just putting question marks. How long have you been there? You're looking, you're opening your bodhicitta heart. You're not fighting with this demon. You're wanting to get to know it. You're putting the question marks. How many lifetimes have you been with me? If I could picture you, how would you look? Don't think, just picture it in your mind. Your heart is opening up. Suddenly there's not a war. I really want to get to know you. Control demon, I really want to get to know you. Why I always try and control everything. I can never let go. Don't creep up on me. Let's talk. Let's share. Let's communicate. What do you need from me? What do you want to change in me? How do you want me to respond differently? Where do you come from? I know I didn't get you from this life. Mom and Dad were really kind to me. But where do you come from? Why am I always so lacking in trust with people? I've always regarded you as something and someone I don't want. But maybe you have an answer for me. I really could develop feelings for you. What do you need from me? Have whatever you need from me. Let's be friends. Let's get to know each other's needs. Please don't hide in the dark. I want to embrace you. I respect you. You've been with me for a long time. Come into the light. don't operate undercover and become a saboteur and sabotage everything I try to do. How many lifetimes have I been with you? What is it that you really want to tell me? Could we be friends? Now take that with you. You can ask me questions afterwards, but I want to just read you, Kath, if you're ready, I just want to read the English of this practice that we're going to try and do. Okay, I want to read you what the English is, and it goes with a tune. So, see how it gets, no, the opposite page, Kath, that's the third paragraph and fourth one. It's not number one. Got number one.
I just have to check.
It's that pe luce Zimbabwe. That's it.
That one. Okay.
Now we're going to just look at the English. I don't know if you can make the English a little bigger just for a moment, Kati, if you can.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't matter. I'll just read it. I know it's difficult because it comes from that long page, doesn't it? It's hard to make it.
It's also, I can't see where I can zoom in to make it a bit bigger.
Okay, sweet. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to read you. First of all, the pair is a very important expression. You use it a lot in the chirp practice because you go pair, pair. It's like it brings your attention together. So now the practice goes, defeat the Devamara by casting, Devamara is Skandamara that I told you with all the aggregates, by casting away clinging to the cherished body. Eject the mind into space through the door of Brahma. The Mara of the Lord of Death is defeated. I have become Rudrani, the right hand with a hook chopper. The Klesha Mara, that's all the afflictions, is defeated, cuts through the head, and the Rupa Mara is defeated. Then it goes on to say, the Banda is picked up like a servant by the left hand that places it upon the hearth of the human skulls of the three kayas, those are your three bodies, and within that corpse which fills the universe melts into Amrita due to the hum and the short I, don't worry about that now, and is purified, increased, and transformed through the power of the three syllables, which are Ahum, Ahum. And you say that a lot of times. And then you go on to the end of the practice, the next lot, and it goes, Pe. The high guests of the offering are satisfied. That's the next lot, Kathy. The accumulations are completed. The supreme and ordinary siddhis are obtained. The lower guests of samsara are pleased. Karmic debts are purified. The classes of harm doers and hindrances in particular are contented. Illnesses, demonic forces, and obstacles are dissolved into space. Evil circumstance and ego clinging are destroyed into dust. And finally, all that is offered, the offerer, which is you, and the offered to, are the nature of the uncontrived Mahasandhi are. And then it says, through the power of this gift, may all beings spontaneously become Buddhas, and may the multitudes of beings that have not been liberated by the previous Buddhas be liberated by this gift. So it's the whole practice of what I've been telling you. Let's just try it. It only takes 5 minutes. But Kath, you know what? I think that we need to type it out if you can, so that next time we can make it really big and people can try and do it. But in the meantime, put on the first gift and let's try it. Let's just try, because it's got a beautiful tune. It only takes 5 minutes, okay, to do. And I just wanted to show you, so it's all about leaving at the top of their head, chopping up the body, offering all the nectar, satisfying all the guests, and your whole life is peaceful. And when I used to finish my chur on retreat, the whole night was calm and still and even, and then I could go straight into the dream state. So let's try and do it. I'll do it with the drum. Do you think, could you all see that? Could you see that that thing? So we're just going to try it with the drum. We do it with the drum and the bell. And we're going to just try it, okay? If it works, it makes
you with my phone.
Sorry. Okay.
I'm going to record you with my phone just so that I know where to put, how the bell and the drum work, so that I can try and practice.
Perfect. And then we'll get it right, but we've just tried to do it for you tonight. It's short and sweet, but that's what it actually means. So the pear is very pronounced, Kat. So you go pear, and then you're dissolving. Just hang on. Hang on. You're dissolving everything with the 3 letters of the 3 syllables. Ahung, body, speech, and mind. And don't forget, everybody, when you're doing it, you're actually putting your demons in front of you, and you're putting all the demons of South Africa or wherever you're living in front of you. And you're putting them there, and you're imagining you're actually feeding them in a beautiful way. So let's just finish it off where the high guests of offering are satisfied, and it's very short. So we do it again. That's it. It's actually, I mean, I know a lot of you are not going to do it, but those that do want to do it, like Eugene asked me last week, It's a beautiful short practice, and you can do it. You can actually put the demons in front of you and you can do it. We'll get it recorded properly. You know how when we start these things, we always have trouble because we've got to work them out. We've got to get the words, we've got to get the tunes, we've got to get everything, but we'll get it right. But I just wanted you to see it. Do you like it? Rob, you used to do it at Kensington. Do you remember?
I can't actually remember, but I did remember that I did enjoy doing it and it worked very well.
Very, very well. It's just a short thing of 4 paragraphs and it's got everything. It's feeding the Klesha Mara. It's coming out of the top of you. It's dissolving. It's Vajragini, chopping up the body, putting it into nectar and feeding the demons. Now, for a lot of you who are new to all of this, I really can appreciate you may not like to do this, and a lot of people might really like to do this, and we'll get it right. But I just wanted you to see that Lama Sondru said this practice is really in order for you to do if you want to do it. And I'll record it with the bell and the drum so that you can just say it. You don't have to do anything with it. You can use your bell if you want. But I think it's a very powerful short practice. It only takes 5 minutes. And then you can put all the demons in front of you as much as you really want to. So questions, comments, let's hear from you, all of you. What you think of it, and then we'll do the 5-step Western one for those of you who don't want to. Gubby, tell me what you feel. Stacy, because you guys are not used to this kind of thing. Steve, you know, Marion's used to it, but tell me what you feel about what I've been saying tonight. I don't know who Daniela is. I do know you. I've seen you before, but not sure. Anyone? Matthew?
Mel, if I can come in again.
Please,
Yeah.
please.
What is the role of the drum and the bell, Mel, in it? I know we're not going to be using it, but you know, what is the actual...
Well, you know what? The drum, it's the whole thing of the whole chirp practice is that it's got these the whole chirp practice has got these beautiful melodies and is unbelievable, you know, that you're singing, you're happy, you're feeding, you're giving, and the bell and the drum, it's probably got, I probably can find the real significance of it, but the whole of the chir is done with this particular drum and with the thigh bone, which goes, ooh, not for this practice, but when you're doing it and with all of that, it is supposed to be a practice that invokes your fear so that you confront your fear, so that it dissolves. So it's not really important whether you do it with a bell and drum, but the actual practice is done with a bell and drum. And I think it's important that, you know, that there is a melody. And I want to tell you what Suraya does. I mean, he was so funny. This is what he says he did. He was a monk. He was a Jewish guy from New York, and then he became a monk. And he said, we can dispense with our fear by cutting through. Sorry that my voice was a bit hoarse because I've been doing a lot of talking today and tonight, so it wasn't so good. But he says, we can dispense with our fear by cutting through our attachment to self and ego. He said, in the ancient Tibetan practice, the practitioner travels to a physical or mental place where his or her fears will be exacerbated and pushed to the limit. And often this practice is done in the dead of the night in a charnel ground or burial site, such as a cemetery. And the practitioner then visualizes the most terrifying kinds of demons, ghosts, creating an atmosphere of pure, unadulterated horror. And then they're singing, you know, they're singing in the midst of all of this. So he is so funny. So he says, and he says, you visualize your body giving nectar. He says, I went to a charnel ground. He was under Kalu Rinpoche. So he says, I went to a charnel ground for the practice of chur. Charnel grounds where they chop up the bodies after they've died and feed them to the vultures and everything. a few dozen times in India and Nepal. Several times I went to a place near a meat slaughterhouse where thousands of water buffalo bones were piled high in macabre pyramids. I mean, he's still got his protected Jewish New York background, you know, so it's quite funny, the whole thing. But he says, one night, as I was chanting, because you have to know the whole practice off by heart, the bones began to shift, move, and rattle about. He says, I didn't think it was a ghost or demon, but I did imagine that some kind of huge rat or snake was making its way through the immense pile. I must admit, I was scared out of my wits, although I somehow managed to keep chanting, praying, and practicing the somber meditation and visualization until dawn. Was I ever happy when that night ended? I began the practice first with a meditation on love and compassion. Then I conjured up as many demons as I could imagine. When I felt filled with terror, I followed Kalu Rinpoche's instruction and imagined all the blood in my body being drawn up and out of my head. I imagined myself taking my freshly severed skull and offering it with my blood and body parts and all my possessions as a tasty stew to the demons. I imagined them chewing on me until they were finally satisfied. And then, to my amazement, and I can tell you this, I didn't do it in a charnel ground, and he says it wouldn't be safe to do it now in a charnel ground, but in those days it did. He says, and then to my amazement, my fears subsided. The demons of inner defilement and delusions must have been pacified and satisfied. I felt peaceful, calm, and liberated. For there is nothing more liberating than freedom from fear. I could still reconnect with this breakthrough when I practice the Chur right now. It provides direct access to non-dual wisdom beyond concept. Having said that, in the 21st century, I don't think any of us should be visiting cemeteries in the dead of night to face our demons. It simply isn't safe, nor is it absolutely necessary. We don't need dangerous places to find our demons. Without leaving our homes, we can visit the personal places of terror that exist in our own mind. And then he goes on to some steps to cut through your fears. So I think it's really important that you understand, because when I was on retreat and in the night, you could hear all the people singing and you could hear all the practices of the church. And then afterwards, I always remember I went to my little kitchen and made a cup of tea. And then I used to sit on the bed, and I can't explain it to you. Everything was pacified. Everything was quiet. There was no sense of rebellion in me. There was no sense of loneliness, even though I'd been there for a long time on my own. There was no sense of anything. There was like a calm, peaceful state. So even if you do this practice of feeding the 5 demons in a Western way without using any of the Tibetan, it's a very, very, very powerful thing. And just the principles of the mysticism of this is so useful to our beings. So ask me, everybody, or tell me. Matthew, you were going to talk. Matt, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to comment, and not so much a question, but I really enjoyed that the traditional Tibetan practice that you put through now. It added so much depth to what I'd read in the book. But I'd also, I'd like to share that link just on the chat there so that everyone can see the book that you referred to. I think it's very digestible the way to read it from that point of view. But now what you've done, and I'll definitely get the recordings to add the depth and the actual traditional you know, to get an insight into the heritage of it. I think it was beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and the thing is, sorry that we haven't got it, so we'll get it perfectly. Kati and I, we work very well together, and we'll find a way. Because even when I was doing the Guru Rinpoche practice, we didn't have the notes, we didn't have the things. It was really difficult. But now we've got it absolutely perfectly, and we'll get this perfectly, because I think that most of us are just gonna. I'm just gonna mute everyone for a moment because there are a lot of noises coming from all of you. But please unmute if you want to talk. But Matthew, thank you for that, because I really think that is so important, because those of you who want the feeling, where is Eugene? Is Eugene still around? Let me see on the other page. Don't know. Okay, maybe he isn't here because he wanted the practice so much. So anyway, seems to not be here anymore. I don't know. But was it foreign for a lot of you? No? Marion, Cassidy?
Hi, Mel.
How were
Hi.
you with little chirp practice?
Well, I really liked what you explained, because it sort of encompasses all of bodhicitta with emptiness. So it's an overall practice that encompasses everything. And it also goes into almost like ultimate bodhicitta, because you're doing it with the wisdom of emptiness and having compassion for those deep, dark demons that we try to push away.
Yeah.
Not just easy things.
Yeah, and you know, it's so funny because the other day I was having a really busy day, and I'd been working and I'd been seeing people, and my grandchildren were phoning me, the bigger ones, and I had to do something else in the house, and I just had like 100 things to do that day, and everybody wanted me. And I just sat in my shrine room and I suddenly thought to myself, you know, it would really be wonderful if I could just dissolve into nectar and just give everybody a little drink that completely satisfied them. You know, I actually had this physical thought. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to slide out of my body, and then I'm just going to offer everybody a piece of me, a little bit of the nectar from my body. But I actually felt it so deeply inside me. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's how these masters work. Because so many people ask them so many hundreds of things, and they actually can pour some nectar into absolutely everybody's thing. And I think it's such a beautiful, the whole concept is beautiful. And when you do Sultram Alione's 5-step practice to feed the demon, which we'll do next week with a discussion, but when you do it, I want you to do it really with this in mind, because when I always did it with people in therapy, they were often not Buddhist, and I was just doing it as a practice. But it's this bodhicitta heart, as you said, Marion, that's really important, because as soon as you've got difficulties in your life and you rather feed them than fight them, what a difference it makes. And I can see a lot of you are really concentrating hard. So maybe we should just dedicate an end, and then maybe if people want to ask me of their own, just tell me one thing. When we did that little meditation, could a lot of you clearly find what your particular demon was?
Yes, no problem with that.
No problem. You
Brittle says I've got a chocolate demon.
So have I. And what does the chocolate demon do for you?
Forces you to eat chocolate against your will.
is anything against your will. It's all your own creation.
Oh,
It's
yes.
so amazing how full of nonsense we are, hey?
Absolutely.
And how many delusive stories we tell ourselves. I mean, we're unbelievable. How many more incarnations? I can't. I have to make some kind of enlightenment this time. I have to.
Me too.
It's really important. And remember, everybody, they're all different levels of enlightenment. So even if we manage to scrape the lowest level, but at least we are not being reborn in samsara, but rather to be reborn in a pure land, then at least we are liberating and can still even pay off our karma from there. It's really important. So, yes, go on, please.
For me, it's such a clever device because by giving your demon a separate entity, as it were, that you can actually look at that sort of create a 3D model in front of you, you can understand it so much better.
Yeah.
And the more you understand it and the more you can see it, the more kind of foolish it sort of seems. So for me, it worked really, really well because suddenly it was outside of me, so it was much more easy to define, whereas before it's all sort of murky and you don't have to look at it, whereas once you've projected it, it's there.
Yeah.
And it's just a very, very clever vehicle to, and I can see it's going to get clearer and clearer, and then the clearer it gets, the less hold it's going to have.
Yeah, for sure. It loses its hold and then, Henry, it dissolves. You haven't got it anymore. But, you know, I really want you guys that are going to do the Nondra at the center, or anyone who's going to the center, I want you to really go and look at the picture of Machik and Padampa Sangjehu Guru in this beautiful Nepal tanka that has been sent to me. And Lama Yeshe looked at it on Sunday and he said, I think you should put this in the Randburg Center. So I want whoever's there to look like you can do it, but I want you to look for a place. Do you know how to drape the top part, Eric? Do you know how you drape the top part of a tanka?
No, the thing is, I mean, we forever installing visual graphics of all sorts.
So
I mean, it's what we do. It's just that obviously when you are dealing with a tanka, it's something special, you know, and it does take its own. I will do some research as well.
Yeah, and you can copy from the other tankers because Annie Lambert fixed them and everything for us. And I can, if necessary, go and fetch her and take her and we can put the tanker up and put the drape. But what I am hoping to do in the center is that all the illness that is on this planet, I'm really, really hoping that we can even do that short practice for the demons of the illness. And I think if we really put our energy together, it'll be fantastic. But let me dedicate, people are in a hurry, some haven't even had supper. So let's dedicate to everyone and then I'll answer any questions we have. So through the virtue of this goodness, may we obtain omniscience and overcome all adversity, thereupon liberating beings from the ocean of existence, which is rocked by the waves of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene jegana chi balak dropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho.